The sun beat down on San Pablo Laguna, baking the red soil of the rice paddies that stretched as far as the eye could see. Ben de la Cruz wiped the sweat from his brow, the familiar ache in his back a constant reminder of the labor that sustained his family. His calloused hands, weathered by years of tilling the land, held a seedling, a promise of future harvest. He glanced towards his small nipa hut, where laughter usually spilled out, a melody that always eased his weary soul. Inside, Elena hummed a familiar kundiman as she stirred a pot of sinigang, the sour, savory aroma filling their small kitchen. 7-year-old Sophia, her dark pigtails bouncing, chased chickens in the yard, her Tagalog chatter a cheerful counterpoint to Elena's song. Juan, now 15, sat hunched over a textbook, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was preparing for his high school exams, a gateway, Ben hoped, to a life beyond the rice fields. Ben often found himself staring at Juan, a knot of worry tightening in his chest. He wanted more for his son, for Sophia too. He envisioned them in crisp school uniforms, not stained with mud, learning skills that would open doors he could only dream of. The rice farm provided, but it was a life of constant struggle, vulnerable to the whims of weather and the fluctuations of the market. He yearned for stability, for a future where his children wouldn't have to toil under the relentless sun just to survive. That evening, as the family gathered around their small dining table, the flickering lamplight casting long shadows on the walls, Ben broached the subject that had been weighing heavily on his mind. "Mga anak, my children," he began, his voice a little hesitant. "Your mama and I have been talking about our future." Juan looked up from his meal of rice and sinigang, his expression curious. Sophia, ever the perceptive one, sensed the gravity in her father's tone and stopped playing with her food. Elena's hand stilled on her spoon, her eyes meeting Ben's across the table. "Auntie Bing," Ben continued. "She has been telling us about life in Toronto, about the opportunities there, especially for education." Auntie Bing, Elena's older sister, had immigrated to Canada years ago. Her occasional letters and photos painted a picture of a land of opportunity, a stark contrast to the realities of their life in San Pablo. She often spoke of the good schools, the healthcare, and the chance for a better life. Juan perked up, his eyes gleaming with interest. "Canada? Like in the movies? Do they really have snow all the time?" Sophia, wide-eyed, asked, "Will there be lots of toys, Papa?" Elena, however, remained quiet, her gaze fixed on her plate. Ben knew her hesitation stemmed from a deep-rooted fear of the unknown, of leaving behind everything familiar. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. "I know it's a big decision, Mahal," he said softly in Tagalog. "Leaving our family, our home, it won't be easy." He paused, searching for the right words. "But I keep thinking about Juan and Sophia, about what's best for them. Here, their options are limited. In Canada, they could become anything they want to be." Elena finally looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and apprehension. "But what about our parents? Our friends? We'll be so far away." "We'll visit," Ben promised, squeezing her hand, "and they can visit us. Besides, Auntie Bing is there. She'll help us get settled." Juan, sensing his mother's reluctance, spoke up. "Mama, think about it. I could go to a really good school, maybe even become an engineer." Sophia, always eager for adventure, chimed in. "And I can learn to ice skate." Ben smiled, his heart swelling with love for his children. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but their enthusiasm fueled his determination. He had to do this for them. "I've already started the application process," he announced, his voice firm. "It will take time, but I believe this is the right thing to do." The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Ben worked longer hours in the fields, saving every peso he could. Elena started selling homemade delicacies at the local market, her skills in the kitchen adding to their meager savings. They spent evenings poring over immigration forms, deciphering complex legal jargon with the help of a Tagalog English dictionary. They sold some of their prized possessions, a carabao, a family heirloom necklace, even their beloved karaoke machine. Each sale a painful reminder of what they were leaving behind, but also a step closer to their new life. Saying goodbye was the hardest part. Their small nipa hut was filled with relatives and friends, all offering words of encouragement and tearful farewells. Ben's parents, their faces etched with worry, clutched his hands tightly, offering blessings for a safe journey. Elena's mother pressed a Sampaguita lei into her daughter's hands, its fragrant scent a reminder of home. Juan hugged his best friend, promising to stay in touch through letters and the internet, a promise that felt fragile in the face of such a vast distance. Sofia, oblivious to the full weight of the situation, waved goodbye to her playmates, her small hand clutching a stuffed monkey, her most prized possession. As they boarded the plane at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Ben looked back at the familiar landscape of his homeland, a wave of sadness washing over him. He saw the faces of his loved ones, their smiles and tears etched in his memory. He whispered a silent prayer, asking for guidance and strength as he embarked on this new chapter. Elena squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting the same mix of hope and trepidation. Juan stared out the window, his face a mask of excitement and nervous anticipation. Sofia, nestled between her parents, yawned sleepily, her thumb in her mouth. Before boarding, Ben ensured the balikbayan box was safely stored. It was filled with familiar food items they couldn't live without, family photos and small trinkets that represented their life in San Pablo. It was more than just a box. It was a piece of their hearts, a tangible connection to their past as they ventured into the unknown future. As the plane soared into the sky, leaving behind the familiar sights and sounds of the Philippines, Ben closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He didn't know what awaited them in Toronto, but he knew one thing for sure. He would do everything in his power to make their new life a good one. For his family, he would face any challenge, overcome any obstacle. He was Ben de la Cruz, and he was ready to build a new home, a new future, in the land called Canada. The biting Toronto wind slapped against Ben's face as they stepped out of Pearson International Airport. It was a stark contrast to the humid warmth of San Pablo. Sofia, bundled in a borrowed winter coat that was much too big for her, shivered. "Ang lamig! It's cold!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. Auntie Bing, a warm, matronly figure, enveloped Elena in a hug. "Elena, welcome, welcome. Mabuti naman at nafarating kayo. It's good you arrived safely." Her Tagalog was a comforting balm in the alien landscape. She ushered them towards her minivan, a vehicle that seemed impossibly large compared to the jeepneys back home. The city rushed past in a blur of towering buildings and unfamiliar signs. Ben stared, a mixture of awe and apprehension swirling within him. Toronto was a world away from the rice paddies and familiar faces of Laguna. Auntie Bing's apartment, located in a vibrant, bustling neighborhood, was their temporary haven. The building was a melting pot of cultures, the air thick with the aroma of spices from distant lands. The apartment itself was small, but clean and welcoming, filled with the familiar scent of Filipino cooking. Pasensya na kayo, huh? Please excuse the small space. It's not much, but it's home, Auntie Bing said, gesturing around the living room. You can stay here until you find your own place. Finding their own place, however, proved to be a daunting task. The classified ads in the newspaper were filled with unfamiliar terms and exorbitant prices. Ben and Elena spent days navigating the city's public transportation, a complex network of buses, streetcars, and subways. Each apartment viewing was a lesson in disappointment. Cramped basements, noisy streets, and landlords who seemed hesitant to rent to newcomers. Ang hirap pala dito. It's so difficult here, Elena sighed one evening, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. I miss our house in San Pablo. Ben squeezed her hand. Kailangan tiyaga. We need patience, he said, forcing a smile. We'll find something. Para sa mga bata. For the children. The weather also presented its own set of challenges. The relentless wind and persistent drizzle made simple tasks like grocery shopping an ordeal. Sophia, used to playing freely outdoors, was cooped up inside, her energy finding an outlet in boisterous games that tested the limits of the small apartment. Ben's job search was equally frustrating. He visited countless factories and warehouses. His resume, a carefully crafted document detailing his farming experience and limited mechanical skills, eliciting polite but firm rejections. The language barrier was a significant hurdle. His English, learned from textbooks in high school, was inadequate for the demands of the Canadian workplace. He took on odd jobs, shoveling snow, moving furniture, anything to bring in some income. The work was backbreaking and the pay was meager, but Ben persevered, driven by the image of his children thriving in this new land. Juan, meanwhile, was struggling to adjust to school. The classes were challenging, the language was confusing, and the other students seemed distant and uninterested. He missed his friends back in San Pablo, the familiar banter and shared experiences. He felt like an outsider, adrift in a sea of unfamiliar faces. His clothes, his accent, even the way he ate his lunch, everything seemed to mark him as different. He longed for the comfort of his old life, the easy camaraderie of his friends, the familiar taste of his mother's cooking. He started retreating into himself, spending hours listening to Tagalog music on his headphones, a small piece of home in the foreign landscape. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed to be thriving. Her youthful exuberance and natural charm quickly won over her classmates. She picked up English with astonishing speed, peppering her Tagalog with Canadian slang. "Mommy, can I have some juice, please?" she'd ask, her accent already sounding distinctly North American. One afternoon, Elena went to a local grocery store to buy ingredients for sinigang, a sour and savory Filipino soup. She carefully examined the vegetables, comparing prices and selecting the freshest ingredients. At the checkout counter, she encountered a problem. A price tag on a package of tamarind paste seemed unusually high. Confused, she pointed to the tag and asked the cashier, "How much?" The cashier, a young woman with a bored expression, mumbled something Elena couldn't understand. Elena, flustered, repeated her question, her Tagalog accent thick. "Magkano po? How much is it?" The cashier sighed impatiently. "I don't understand," she said, her tone sharp. "English, please." Elena's face flushed with embarrassment. She struggled to find the right words, her mind racing. "Price. This. How much?" she stammered, pointing at the tamarind paste again. The cashier rolled her eyes and called over a supervisor. A brief, hushed conversation ensued, and Elena felt the wave of shame wash over her. She felt like she was being judged, ridiculed for her inability to speak the language. She quickly paid for her groceries and hurried out of the store, tears stinging her eyes. Back at the apartment, she recounted the incident to Ben, her voice trembling with emotion. "I felt so stupid," she sobbed. "I couldn't even ask a simple question." Ben held her close, stroking her hair. "Hush, Elena," he said softly. "It's okay. We're still learning. We'll get better. Huwag kang mawalan ng pag-asa. Don't lose hope." That night, Ben resolved to redouble his efforts to learn English. He borrowed textbooks from the local library and spent hours studying, poring over grammar rules and vocabulary lists. He knew that mastering the language was crucial to their success in this new land, not just for finding a good job, but also for navigating everyday life and ensuring that his family felt truly at home in Toronto. The trials were many, but the hope for a better future burned bright, a guiding light in the unfamiliar darkness. The scent of industrial cleaner and the rhythmic hum of machinery filled Ben's nostrils. The warehouse was a stark contrast to the rice paddies of Laguna, but it was a welcome change. After weeks of fruitless applications and disheartening interviews, he had finally landed a stable job at a manufacturing warehouse on the outskirts of Toronto. The work was physically demanding, requiring him to lift heavy boxes and operate machinery for hours on end. But with every box he loaded, every shipment he prepared, Ben felt a surge of hope. This was it. This was the footing they needed. He remembered the look on Elena's face when he told her the news. Relief washed over her features, erasing the worry lines that had become etched there. "Salamat sa Dios, Ben," she had whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Thank God. Ben's relief was immense, but it was quickly followed by the realization that he needed to improve his English. His co-workers were understanding, but communication was still a challenge. He resolved to enroll in night classes, sacrificing precious sleep to learn the language that held the key to his family's future. Meanwhile, Juan was slowly finding his place at school. The initial weeks had been tough. He missed his friends in San Pablo, and the Canadian slang felt like a foreign language. But something shifted when he saw tryouts for the school basketball team. Basketball had always been his passion, a way to connect with others back home. He decided to give it a shot. The tryouts were nerve-wracking. The other kids were bigger, more experienced, and spoke English fluently. Juan's Tagalog accent was thick, and he struggled to understand the coach's instructions. But when he got the ball in his hands, something clicked. His natural talent shone through. He dribbled with confidence, weaved through defenders, and sunk shot after shot. He made the team. Basketball became Juan's bridge to Canadian culture. He started making friends, learning new slang, and feeling more comfortable in his own skin. He still held on to his Filipino heritage, but he was beginning to embrace his new identity as a Filipino Canadian. Sophia, on the other hand, was thriving. Her youthful exuberance and natural curiosity made her a sponge for the new culture. She picked up English effortlessly, peppering her conversations with Canadian slang she learned from her classmates. She excelled in her studies, her teachers praising her enthusiasm and quick learning. "Nanay, can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" she'd ask Elena. her Tagalog mixing seamlessly with her newly acquired English. Elena would smile, marveling at her daughter's adaptability. She would try her best to replicate the dish, often adding a Filipino twist that made Sofia giggle. The De La Cruz family started building connections within the Filipino community in Toronto. Auntie Bing, a constant source of support, introduced them to a Filipino church, where they found a sense of belonging and familiarity. The church became their sanctuary, a place where they could worship in Tagalog, share stories of their homeland, and find comfort in the company of fellow immigrants. They also joined a Filipino community group, where they learned about local events, cultural celebrations, and resources for newcomers. The group organized picnics, potlucks, and workshops, creating a vibrant social network for Filipino families in Toronto. One Saturday, Auntie Bing took Ben and Elena to a Filipino grocery store. The familiar sights and smells of home filled them with nostalgia. They stocked up on Filipino staples like rice, soy sauce, and dried fish. As they walked through the aisles, they overheard snippets of Tagalog conversations, a comforting reminder of their roots. "Remember this?" Auntie Bing asked, holding up a jar of ube jam. "This will remind you of home." Ben smiled, remembering his mother's homemade ube halaya, a purple yam dessert that was a staple during family gatherings. He bought the jar, knowing it would bring a taste of home to their small apartment. Ben's English classes were challenging but rewarding. He struggled with grammar and pronunciation, but he persevered, driven by his desire to communicate effectively with his coworkers and help his children with their homework. He practiced his English with Elena, who patiently corrected his mistakes. During weekends, the De La Cruz family ventured out to explore Toronto's diverse neighborhoods. They visited Kensington Market, a vibrant area filled with vintage shops, street art, and eclectic restaurants. They strolled through Hyde Park, enjoying the natural beauty and wide green spaces. They explored Chinatown, marveling at the colorful shops and delicious food. One Sunday, they visited the Art Gallery of Ontario. Juan, initially reluctant, was captivated by the Indigenous art exhibit. He learned about the history and culture of Canada's First Nations people, gaining a new appreciation for the country's rich heritage. Sophia, meanwhile, was fascinated by the colorful paintings, pointing out her favorite artworks with childlike enthusiasm. Ben's workplace was slowly becoming a second home. His coworkers, a diverse group of immigrants from all over the world, welcomed him with open arms. They shared stories of their own immigration experiences, offering advice and support. Ben learned about different cultures, languages, and customs, expanding his worldview. During lunch breaks, Ben would share stories about his life in the Philippines. He told them about his rice farm, his family, and the traditions of his hometown. His coworkers were fascinated by his stories, eager to learn about his culture. One day, Ben's supervisor approached him with a proposition. "Ben, we're organizing a multicultural festival at the warehouse next month," he said. "We want to celebrate the diversity of our workforce. Would you be interested in representing the Philippines?" Ben was hesitant at first. He wasn't sure if he had the time or the skills to organize such an event. But then he thought about his family, his community, and his desire to share his culture with others. He accepted the challenge. He enlisted the help of Elena, Auntie Bing, and the Filipino community group. Together, they planned a showcase of Filipino culture, featuring traditional music, dance, food, and crafts. The preparations for the multicultural festival brought the De La Cruz family closer together. Elena spent hours in the kitchen, preparing traditional Filipino dishes like adobo, lumpia, and pancit, Juan practiced his tinikling steps with the Filipino community dance troupe. Sophia helped decorate the booth with colorful Filipino flags and posters. As the day of the festival approached, Ben felt a sense of pride and excitement. He had come a long way from the rice paddies of Laguna. He had faced countless challenges, but he had persevered, driven by his love for his family and his desire to build a better life for them in Canada. He knew they had found their footing, a place where they could embrace their Filipino heritage while building a new future in this diverse and welcoming country. The aroma of garlic, soy sauce, and vinegar filled the De La Cruz's small apartment, a comforting scent that transported Elena back to her mother's kitchen in San Pablo. Today was the day of the multicultural festival, and Elena was determined to share a taste of home with their new community. "Juan, anak, be careful with the lumpia," she cautioned, watching her son expertly arrange the crispy spring rolls on a platter. Juan, now a confident teenager, grinned. "Nanay, relax, I got this. Besides," he added with a playful nudge, "everyone loves lumpia." His English was nearly flawless now, sprinkled with Canadian slang he picked up from his basketball teammates. He was comfortable in his own skin, a blend of Filipino heritage and Canadian cool. Sophia, ever the social butterfly, flitted around the apartment, her bright yellow dress a splash of sunshine. "Papa, are we going to see the Mounties?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. She had been captivated by the stories Ben told her about the iconic Canadian symbol. Ben, beaming with pride, ruffled her hair. "Maybe Anak, but first, we show everyone how amazing Filipino culture is, okay?" He glanced around the apartment, a wave of emotion washing over him. Just months ago, this small space had felt like a cage, a stark reminder of their struggles. Now it felt like home, filled with laughter, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The community center buzzed with energy. Booths representing countries from around the world lined the hall, each offering a glimpse into a unique culture. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices, the sound of unfamiliar languages, and the vibrant colors of traditional clothing. Elena's adobo was a hit. People lined up, eager to sample the savory dish, their faces lighting up with each bite. "This is amazing!" exclaimed a woman with bright red hair. "What is it?" "Adobo," Elena replied, her English still halting, but her smile radiant. "Filipino chicken." Juan, ever the helpful son, stepped in to translate and explain the dish's origins. He spoke with passion and pride, his words painting a vivid picture of the Philippines. Ben watched him, his heart swelling with pride. His son, once hesitant to embrace his heritage, was now its champion. Sophia, meanwhile, was busy making friends. She skipped from booth to booth, her infectious laughter drawing other children to her. She taught them simple Tagalog words, giggling as they stumbled over the unfamiliar sounds. "Salamat," she chirped, handing a sticker to a little girl with pigtails. "That means thank you." As the afternoon wore on, it was Juan's turn to shine. Dressed in a traditional Barong Tagalog, he joined his school group on stage to perform a tinikling dance. The bamboo poles clacked rhythmically, a heartbeat echoing through the hall. Juan moved with grace and agility, his eyes focused, his movements precise. The audience was captivated, their cheers growing louder with each daring step. Ben watched from the sidelines, a lump forming in his throat. He remembered Juan's initial reluctance to participate in the dance, his fear of being different. Now, He was not only embracing his culture, but sharing it with the world. After the performance, Juan was surrounded by his friends, their faces flushed with excitement. "That was awesome, Juan," exclaimed one of his teammates. "You were like flying." Juan grinned. "Thanks, man. It's a lot harder than it looks." He glanced at his father, a silent understanding passing between them. He knew his father had made sacrifices for him, and he was determined to make him proud. As the sun began to set, the De La Cruz family gathered beneath the Filipino flag, a symbol of their heritage and their resilience. They watched as other families, representing different cultures, mingled and shared stories. The air was filled with a sense of unity, a celebration of diversity. Ben put his arm around Elena, pulling her close. "We did it, Mahal," he whispered. "We found our place." Elena smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "Yes, Ben, we are home." Suddenly, Sophia tugged on Ben's hand. "Papa, look," she exclaimed, pointing towards the entrance. Standing there, resplendent in their scarlet uniforms, were two Mounties. Sophia gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. Ben smiled. "Come on, Anak, let's go say hello." As they approached the Mounties, Ben felt a surge of pride. He was no longer just a rice farmer from San Pablo. He was a father, a provider, a community member, a Filipino Canadian. He had faced challenges and overcome obstacles, but he had never lost sight of his dreams. "Good afternoon, officers," Ben said, his English now confident and clear. "Welcome to our festival." The Mounties smiled warmly. "It's a pleasure to be here," one of them replied. "We're always happy to support our community." Sophia, emboldened by her father's presence, stepped forward. "Can I take a picture with you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The Mounties chuckled. "Of course, you can." As Sophia posed for the picture, her face radiant with joy, Ben looked around at his family. Elena, beaming with pride. Juan, chatting animatedly with his friends. And Sophia, embracing her new life with open arms. He'd given them the opportunity he had always dreamed of, a chance to thrive in a land of opportunity. Later that evening, as they packed up their belongings, Auntie Bing approached them, her face etched with admiration. "Ben, Elena," she said, "you have done so well. You have shown everyone what it means to be Filipino." Ben shook his head humbly. "We just did what any family would do, Tita," he replied. "We worked hard, we supported each other, and we never gave up hope." Auntie Bing smiled. "That is the Filipino spirit, Ben, and you have brought it to Canada." As they walked home, hand in hand, the De La Cruz family felt a sense of belonging they had never experienced before. They were Filipinos, they were Canadians, and they were proud of both. They had found their place in the world, a place where they could celebrate their heritage, embrace their new culture, and build a brighter future for generations to come. Back in their apartment, Sophia, exhausted from the day's festivities, snuggled up to Elena. "Nanay," she mumbled sleepily. "I love Canada." Elena kissed her forehead. "I love it too, Anak," she whispered, "but I will always love the Philippines." Juan, who was helping Ben clean up, overheard their conversation. "You know," he said, "we can love both. We can be Filipino and Canadian. It's like having the best of both worlds." Ben smiled. "Exactly, Enoch. We are Filipino Canadians, and that is something to be proud of." He looked around at his family, his heart overflowing with love. They had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger than ever. They had built a new life in Canada, a life filled with hope, opportunity, and the unwavering bond of family. As he turned off the lights, Ben thought of his father, back in San Pablo, tending to his rice fields. He hoped his father would be proud of him, proud of the life he had built for his family. He knew that he had made the right decision, that he had given his children the chance to reach their full potential. And as he drifted off to sleep, Ben dreamt of a future where his children would thrive, where they would contribute to their community, and where they would always remember their Filipino roots. He dreamt of a future where the De La Cruz family would continue to celebrate their intertwined Filipino-Canadian identity, a beacon of hope and resilience in a diverse and ever-changing world. He knew they would always carry the spirit of bayanihan with them, the spirit of community, cooperation, and unwavering support for one another, the very essence of what it meant to be Filipino. And that, he knew, would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead.